Hello there, my name is Carol King and I am the developer of Custom Home Builder Solutions, which is also known as CHS. And first of all, I'd like to thank you for taking the time out to learn about CHS. CHS is a job costing and a full accounting web-based software that I developed by using my degree and extensive experience in accounting for home builders. It is also a profit management software tool to give you the information you need to make decisions about your jobs in progress and your business. It was designed specifically for custom home builders. You know, just like the homes you build are unique, the software tools you need are also unique and can be very different from tools that production builders need. So about 21 years ago, as of 2021, several custom home builders in Austin, Texas asked me to work with them to develop a software that would handle their unique needs. And I don't know what I was thinking, because record keeping and accounting in the home building industry is very complex. But I took on the challenge with the goal of giving your team the tools to manage all that number crunching without creating a whole bunch of spreadsheets in order to give you the results you need to run a profitable business. So I'm going to show you how I accomplish this for you in CHS. By using some silly vintage clip art in addition to on-screen tutorials. Well, really, what a daunting task I decided to take on. You know, it felt daunting then, and it still feels daunting 21 years later. And of course, when I started out, I had to figure out what to do first. So I thought, I'm just going to break this apart into pieces and think about it. And one of the first things I knew after working as a controller in the back office of a custom home builder and needing to do all of those reports like variance reports and so much more, and doing all of those Excel spreadsheets for that builder in order to get those reports, was that I needed to bring together their job budgets or estimates, which predict the job costs, and then purchase orders or work orders, which are committed costs, and then change orders and get the estimated costs of those, and then actual job costs, which are the incurred costs, paid or unpaid, that have been posted. I needed a way to link those together to instantly see where job costs were headed and to have the team be able to communicate with each other about those costs. Typically, you know, different team members handle different parts of this, like the builder or project manager might handle doing the original job budget or estimate, and maybe the estimate of change orders. And maybe they, or a purchasing person, prepares purchase orders and work orders. Then there's an accounting team or a bookkeeper posting and paying actual job costs from invoices or bills that are received from trades and suppliers. And since I wanted to bring all of that together in order to monitor job costs, I realized, first of all, that the common word for all of those tasks is the word cost. And those costs can be for different things like plans, roofing, framing, plumbing, etc., or in other words, job costs. So the first thing I needed to do was set up something that we could use to mark what those costs were for in each of those job costs area. So let's go take a look at what that's all about and what we ended up using. So here we are inside of CHS, and one of the first things I'd like you to notice that it is opened in my Firefox web browser. That's because this is a web-based program, and we'll talk about the advantages of that, like being able to work from home or in the field a little bit later. This is the main menu of CHS, which has different expanding menus to go to different areas of CHS, and we'll get into those as we progress through the seminar. Now, builder software consultants will tell you that before you start any new software, you should have your team in place and know who will be doing the tasks. And then, just like I was developing CHS a step at a time, you should take the time to set up software a step at a time for best results. So to help you with that, the first thing you should do is expand Setup and Help and click on the CHS setup steps. As you can see, there are steps marked for the builder and steps for the accounting team. When you click on the links, a help list will open that has help docs and video tutorials about that step. For example, set up user permissions here, which I'd like to mention, is that you can set up permissions for the various users based on what they should have access to in CHS. Maybe you have people in the field that are getting on to approve job cost bills, etc. But other than that, they should not have access to other accounting information. Various things like that. So here's some video tutorials and some help documents about user permissions and setting up your company master and your company logo. Those are some basic setup steps for CHS. It's very step by step, and because I don't want you to get overwhelmed, you should take it a step at a time in the order that you see here. Although some accountants can get started working on some of their stuff and the builder can work on their stuff basically at the same time, but the builder should do these step by step and the accountant should do these step by step. One of the biggest mistakes people make when getting a new software is to be in such a hurry that they just overlook setting up some things properly, and then later end up doing rework to get those things set up properly. So take time now so that you don't waste time later. Be very careful about thinking that you don't need something and just skipping past it, because you just might overlook something that will make a big difference to streamlining your workflow and receiving faster results, which is why you are probably here in CHS in the first place. So let's jump back to the home menu and let's get started with that cost code centers setup that we were talking about just a minute ago and how we accomplished that. Well, before I jump into the cost codes master setup, since you're getting familiar with CHS, I want to tell you that I clicked this Active Jobs Dashboard button and opened a Jobs Dashboard that is now opened in a tab here, and I selected a job, and I also opened that Jobs Budget Worksheet, and you can see that in a tab here. And back on the dashboard, I also opened the Estimated Cost at Completion Worksheet, which I talked about quite a bit in the introduction video for these seminars. And then I've opened an area for creating payables bills, because as I talk about the cost codes that you're going to set up, I'm going to show you some end results of those, and I wanted to have those ready to show you. But you can see how you can jump back and forth the budget to the ECC, to the jobs dashboard, you know, that kind of thing. And there is a thing here to close all tabs except the last one, and if I clicked that, all these tabs would be closed except for this very last one that I opened for creating a payables bill. Also, when you first open CHS, you will land on a launch page that you can always go back to see some certain comments and what are coming in. And you can go to the home. Once you continue to the main menu, you'll have a tab here. And these two will always stay open even if it says close all tabs except last one. So anyway, let's open the cost codes master setup. It's right here on top because it is the hub central of doing job costing. The cost codes are used to compare so many things across the board in so many areas. Now the first things you see are something about job stages and cost types. Those actually need to be set up before you set up your cost codes, but I will come back to that. I'm going to open the cost codes master. Now, what I'd like you to know is that when you first get CHS, you won't have a bunch of cost codes here just dropped in on you that you may or may not want. This will be empty, and there'll be something in red saying that you can start setting up your own from scratch, or that you can view or load the recommended NAHB cost code. NAHB is the National Association of Home Builders, and I'll click this. And they have come up with a set of cost codes. I may have gotten rid of a few of them from their original stuff, but I brought those in to use because I'll tell you, there is no way, even after 21 years of working with builders, that I could set up cost codes for you. And neither can your bookkeeper usually. It's the builder that needs to be doing that. But it's great that they created a list that I could offer to you to go ahead and load. You can open a report, send it to PDF or to Excel of these NAHB cost codes to study on them before you decide to load them. Maybe you'll print this out, write and scribble some notes on it and various things about ones you'd like to use and ones you wouldn't like to use. If you decide that you want to load the NAHB cost codes, you will click this load button. It will confirm, and then you would load all those cost codes. Now the important thing to understand, people will call me up and say, your cost codes, and I'll say, no, if you loaded the NAHB, those are NAHB's cost codes. The important thing to know is that if you load these NAHB cost codes, there's pencil-edit icons here where you can change the title, change the actual cost code, or there are X buttons here to completely delete them, and you can add as many new cost codes as you like. And if you'll notice, these are all done in groups here. Various groups, utility connections. You start getting down here and seeing framing materials and framing labor and electrical. So this is a group of electrical with rough, final, and electrical extras. Most of these are from the NAHB one for this builder, but what I've used is a database from a builder, and he's added some or maybe removed some, etc. from the original NAHB cost codes. So what I'd like you to really understand is this is not what you have to use. You are totally welcome. You are the builder. You know what you need. You may have an Excel spreadsheet that you've been estimating costs, and you've kind of been doing them in groups maybe like this, and you're using that, and you can make your very own from scratch if you like. But the very first thing I'm going to talk about before you just decide you're going to hand somebody your Excel spreadsheet to set these up for you is that I really would like to encourage you to do that yourself. You'll see as I go through this how much you know that a bookkeeper that you might hand it to set up will not know, and how important setting these up properly and right for best use throughout the program is probably only a job that you can really do. And it's really good for you to put hands on CHS so that you understand what it has to offer, so that you can know what to expect from your team or to ask for from your team. So I'd really like to encourage that you would do that. Like I said, after 21 years, I'm an accountant, etc., worked as a controller in a home builder's office, but there is no way that I'm going to actually understand what I'm doing. I don't know what a wind brace design is for engineering, for example. I couldn't ever decide to set that up. I wouldn't know where to set it up, what order to set it up in, that kind of thing. So you don't really want to kind of put your bookkeeper into tears trying to set up some things or understanding, first of all, what stages are. And those are phases of the job. And if you're a builder and you're listening to me, you can see that if I get down here back to the electrical, there's a stage right here. And I'm going to talk about setting those up in a minute, but it says this is stage 4, rough electrical, and final electrical is in stage 9. This means these are done at different points in time of building a home. Now, I wouldn't be able to tell you also what stage something should be in because I'm not a builder. And your bookkeeper won't be able to put the right stages on these, I just bet you. You're going to set up your own stages, but you would be the one to understand what stages you're putting these various cost centers into. You'll see up here, tip, avoid too many cost codes that will bog down your accounting, and I'll show you how you can bog down your accounting by making your cost centers be too detailed. And I'll show you how you can set up items behind your cost codes for the detail that you'd like to have about that cost center. So I'm going to click this to read more for just a second. Avoid cost codes that are too detailed. Manage by exception. You can Google the words manage by exception to understand that. I'm going to use masonry materials in a minute as an example. And I'm going to be suggesting that you don't put every type of brick or every type of whatever it is that you use for masonry as a separate cost center. I'm going to suggest that you have one cost center called masonry materials and then set up items behind it. Although it can be tempting to create extremely detailed cost codes for budgeting and managing costs, too much detail can actually have the opposite effect and may cause you to lose the ability to manage costs effectively. You will also bog down your accounting unnecessarily. Purchasing will have to create a PO for every single cost code, and your bookkeeper will end up spending way too much time posting multiple lines of payables bills in order to accommodate all these detailed cost codes you might have set up. Not to mention increasing the time to select and pay them on checks in a check run. The purpose of CHS is to make your life easier, not more complicated. CHS is designed based on the idea of manage by exception. Like I said, you can Google that, and not the idea of managing everything as if it is an exception. So if you cause your bookkeeper to start trying to type in every type of brick and everything when they're entering a bill, etc., into different cost codes, which means they'd have to make a bunch of line, instead of just entering the amount for one bill from the masonry materials vendor, CHS is going to warn you when you've gone over your budgeted or estimated amount for masonry materials. And until it warns you of that and you've budgeted for a certain amount, I'm saying don't start worrying about it. Now, if you get warned, you can upload copies of the vendor's original bid and start comparing it to the invoice that you have and drill down on which area they're overcharging you for and call them up and talk about it. But until that point, you should not take up all kinds of time of your bookkeepers or whoever's doing the purchasing by making people make all sorts of records to go with every single little cost center. I have an example here. This is from one of my customers, and these are not cost codes that were loaded by NAHB. These are cost code centers this customer set up for basement walls and foundations. Now notice here basement walls -8 foot, basement walls -8 foot 6. And if a bookkeeper is entering a bill and needing to put a line in for every single part of this when they get a bill from whoever they would get this from, this basement walls, maybe they see a drop down and they see the 8, and so maybe they choose the 8.6 one or just the 8 one, and it's really budgeted in the 8.6. Let's take a look at this. This is your estimated cost of completion worksheet, and the builder budgeted $10,971, but what if the bookkeeper comes along, has a bill, and enters $11,428 but selects this one instead? The bookkeeper will get an alert from CHS that this is over budget, so that should cause the bookkeeper to look and drill down on things about that cost code that she can do right on the payables screen, and maybe look to see that it's actually been budgeted in this cost code and hopefully change the cost code she's using. But if she's in a big hurry, who knows, she might select the wrong one. So what happens when you have an estimated cost of completion, here you're estimating for this to be this much, and the program thinks you posted 0 cost to that, and then you put this here, and all of a sudden it's showing an overage over a budget because there was 0 budget for this detailed cost code. And also think about what happens if the vendor bill is just for $6,000 or a partial bill, and then the bookkeeper does spot this, posts it to this, and puts $6,000 here. CHS is not going to warn that it's over because it's under, and we might double pay it even though we've already paid it here. So my point is, if it's so detailed, you could confuse the bookkeeper so much, and it would be much better to have one cost code for basement walls and set up all of this stuff as items behind that basement walls. So I hope I made the point. It's a really important point, because what I'm trying to say is don't set them up so detailed that everybody gets confused by them. Everybody has to do a whole bunch of work entering a bunch of lines for every single cost code, and I'll demonstrate that with masonry materials here. So let's jump back to the program, and I'd like to go down to masonry materials. I can do an M right here if I just want to see if I can find it faster, because I know it starts with that. But look, this is masonry materials, masonry labor, masonry turnkey, and masonry fireplace that this builder has set up. If I look at the list of NAHB cost codes and I look at masonry, they have quite a few here, a lot more than what the builder has. Now, since I'm not a builder, I'm not sure. Maybe you do want what NAHB puts here for chimney, and then for brick veneer, and then for floor materials, and you don't want just one thing for masonry materials. Maybe you do want to track them like that, and you might get separate invoices. I told you I'm not a builder and I don't know about this. So it's up to you and your preference what you want to leave when NAHB drops that in, or if they drop in all of that and you want to delete a bunch of them and just have one line for masonry materials, you can do so. Now let's take a look at the items I have set up behind masonry material. See how they are very particular little items, and this was put in here by the builder. So what I'm trying to say is that we don't have a cost code for each one of these. We have one cost code that is 4110 for masonry materials, and behind it we have items. So let's jump over to that ECC for a minute. I am here on masonry materials, and I'd like you to imagine that you had a line for every one of those materials we just looked at. How hard that would be to look at, how hard it would be to monitor, and how hard it would be to manage by exception. Again, this is going to show you that you're headed over, and if you're concerned about it, you can start drilling down on things behind this. So if I look at the actual costs, you can see that there's an attachment here that the bookkeeper attached when entering the bill. But it has the detail right here, and by the way, it was originally attached to the PO so that when the bookkeeper is entering the bill and selects the cost code 4110, she or he can drill down to the PO, and I'll do that here from the ECC, drilling down on the PO, which gives me a screen that shows the PO total and if there's been posted costs. And if I drill down on the PO, which the bookkeeper can do right from the screen where they're entering the bill also, but if they drill down on the PO and they see a paperclip icon on the PO here, it is very likely an uploaded bid that whoever was doing the purchase orders uploaded. So again, she or he can do the comparison and take a look at that. Now you wouldn't want to have issued a whole bunch of these POs because you'll notice that it's based on a cost code. Because we're doing this estimated cost at completion and we're comparing everything, the budget, the POs, the change orders, the actual costs by cost code. Every PO needs to be for only one cost code so we can do that comparison. But behind here also everybody can see the items for this PO and the amounts that were entered from the bid, and then a PO was created from the bid actually. But they can see the amounts and how it's totaling to that bid. So basically I wanted you to know that there are ways to get to that detail all over the place. And I'll just show you real quickly creating bills. I selected Acme Brick and we're going to create a job related bill. Now notice right here that that cost code 4110 dropped in, and that is because we set a default cost code for Acme Brick to be that one cost code. So the bookkeeper might just leave that here, but if they have a bunch of detailed cost codes, she's going to have to make a whole bunch of lines. If I select that Job Vista view that I was using, you can see that all of a sudden I can see the ECC for just that cost code. And if I'm sitting here with the bill for that amount, for the budget and for the PO's amount, and this says actual cost 0, I would know I hadn't posted a cost yet, and I would know that the bill was fine, and I wouldn't have to actually really be drilling down. Now if I have a bill for more than what's showing up here, I could drill down again to the total POs, and you can do that really from here, POs, and look at that detail of the items and decide where it's going over, and then just maybe make a comment about it's going over on the XYZ thing, and tell the project manager that will be approving the job costs about that on this bill. But can you imagine how many lines were on there? 8 or 9 or something lines on that original list of items that were on the bid. If you had a cost code for every one of those items, your bookkeeper would have to enter 8 or 9 lines here to put the different amounts, select the different cost codes, and probably make some mistakes because that's just too much to do there. And for the bookkeeper to be figuring out, now which cost code is this for, and this for, and this for. So I'm hoping, I know I went on here, but I think it's a really important thing that you understand where these cost codes are being used, what team members are going to be using them, and that you need to set them up so that you just maybe have as few as you can so that you're happy with what you're seeing, what you want to monitor, whether it goes over or not. And I believe that the builder should be doing this, and then the builder should be setting up the items behind the cost code. So let's actually get down to the stuff and how you do it real quickly, since I've been yapping so much here. Let's do cost codes master and setup that we're talking about, and about how you set up cost codes. But remember that I said you're going to need to set up something called job stages and cost types first, because you actually will be attaching those to your cost codes. So first of all, I'll click on job stages, and what has opened up here is a list of stages that you set up. You can edit these if some have dropped in when you get CHS so that you can change them. You can add to them just by editing the blank ones. What CHS will recognize is the ones that you have typed a title into. This particular builder has set up 14 stages, 0 through 13, but I allow you 48 stages, 0 through 47. Now it's recommended that you keep these fairly simple. Think of these as when you might be taking draws on jobs, the stages. You know how the bank wants a certain stage or phase completed before they will give you a draw. But let's take a look real quick at the help. And CHS knows what screen we're on, so it's open things about stages. This is explaining stages and a video about it, a document about how one builder uses stages for weekly status reports, which I'll show you real quickly. And where stages are used in CHS, there's a video just really showing that, and how you can use stages for doing percent complete draw requests for those fixed contracts. It will be based on how you've marked up your budget and show you a marked up budget when you open a draw request that's percent complete. CHS also provides cost plus draw requests, but it will, for percent complete, let you click a button and say mark everything complete through a certain stage, so it's handy for that. But job stages are used in various ways to track the construction status of a job. Generally, you should set up stages based on the points in time that you usually request draws during the construction progress. Job stages should be set up before setting up cost codes for cost code centers, because each cost code will be assigned to a job stage. Using stages, you can prepare weekly job status reports that show the progress of active jobs over the past 12 weeks. Also, use job stages to forecast draw request dollars, prepare a percent complete draw request through a selected stage, create job schedule projects that you attach tasks to them, issue purchase orders by stage, and approve work done on those POs through a certain stage, and more. Now notice that there's a help document here that I'll just open real quickly besides the video, and this says basically the same things right here that I was just saying, but I want to move down to where it is showing that weekly status. First of all, there's a page showing how you add a new status for each active job on Monday dates every week to prepare for a meeting, and you can actually put some other dates in that will show up on weekly status reports here that you set up. You say what dates, you type in whatever it is you think you're tracking. But first of all, you can print a list of the job stages to attach to the weekly status report. And if I get closer in here, this is a weekly status report. I'm just showing only 2 active jobs that is showing what stage is complete as of the Monday date that is used. And the Monday date is showing up here. It's showing how many days in production, who the builder is on it. And so you can see that if something is bogging down, like there's 7s in here, stage 7, for several weeks, you can also use this, say stage 8 is complete, I need to do a draw request for stage 8 or for stage 6 here. And like I said, there's a builder's explanation about how he uses this that you can click on, a document about that. There's also another one that's a legal size report that will show those dates. I told you could set up certain dates you're monitoring and wanting to look at, and you can title them whatever you like and put a date into them. Also, like I said, real importantly, once you set up your job budgets or estimates, you can print that job budget not only grouped by all the groups that we saw on the Cost Code Master, but by stage, which can give you a good little forecast about how much money you might be drawing. And you can do that at cost, or you can do it at the marked up cost and look at those. You'll probably see more of that when I'm doing the budget seminar. So let's close that. The other thing that you need to get set up first is something called cost types. I'd like you to not pay attention to this over here, these 2 columns. That has to do with actually when you're posting payroll and getting some workers' comp reports. And we're not worried about that for setting up cost codes. Now when you set up a cost code, it's going to ask you what cost type. Generally it's something like labor or materials. You can see that these are dimmed because we do provide these and we use them in various places and refer to them, like on general liability audit reports where we gather costs to show how much is labor or how much is materials. And that's why you are attaching cost types, basically, to the cost codes. There's also a cost type dimmed out called sales tax, because CHS, when you post a bill in payables, will post 2 lines. If you've made 1 line, put in a sales tax percent, CHS knows it, and it posts 2 lines so that it will have a line in your accounting database with a cost type of sales tax. And if the home buyer calls you and asks for a report of how much sales tax has been paid, it's really easy to do by just printing a report of just the lines that are marked as sales tax. Or you can print ledgers and reports from your actual cost database, from your general ledger, etc., that are just for the cost type labor or just for the cost type materials, etc. To add a new cost type, you just click this and you type in the cost type and submit it. So it's that easy to do. If you want to edit, you don't want to call this office help anymore, you click the pencil edit icon, change this office help, and submit it, and it will change the title that you have here. It's just that easy. You can try to delete a cost type. CHS actually is going to go out and check the program to see if you've used that cost type in various places and tell you can't delete it and why. So that's the basics real quickly. Like I said, there are full videos on doing those and showing where they're used all over the program. So let's get over there and talk about setting up cost codes themselves and the various tools that you have for doing that. We've already gone over how you can add a new cost code if you click it. It's going to ask you for a cost code title. It's going to ask you to select what group it's in, what stage, what cost type. I'm going to close this because I'll open one that's already filled in to make this faster. But first of all, we talked about how these are in various groups. You can set up everything yourself from scratch, or if you need to add another grouping that the NAHB didn't have, like maybe those basement walls I mentioned a minute ago, you can add or edit groups and basically add a new group, give it a number, and what I'd like you to remember is it will control the order of how things are showing up on things like job cost reports or the estimated cost at completion screen or on your budgets, etc. So you want to probably do those in a certain order for however you'd like to see those groups and everything that will be under them. You can edit and change the title of the group. You can try to delete the group. If you have attached cost codes to the group, you won't be able to delete it, and you should delete the cost codes under the group first and then come here and delete. If you click to edit, you can just change the title. If you add a new group, again, it's just going to ask for the group code, which should be numerical, and that group heading, and you submit it and close. So what I'd like to do is show you that you can do a keyword search for something that you're looking for, and I'm interested in looking for stuff that has elec or electrical. You can type part of the word and see here how I've gotten to the electrical real quickly with the rough, final, and electrical extras. Notice again that these are in different stages, and you can hover over it and see the stage. Also notice that they've been assigned cost types. This is turnkey because turnkey means that they provide both the labor and materials, and I'm always emphasizing that when you enter the bill, hopefully you can get the information for how much is labor and how much is materials, and maybe make 2 lines for those so that it's a better thing for your general liability audits. And you don't have to use the turnkey that will drop in when you use this cost code when you're entering a bill. So if I click to edit this, first of all, you see that the cost code is 3710 and that I selected the group 3700. Now notice how the group starts with 2 digits that are 37. It is quite common then for all the cost codes that follow it to have a 37. It must be numerical, and you don't have to make it be 4 digits, but please try not to make it too long, either one of these, because you don't want them to be truncated on reports. Then you simply type in the cost code title. Again, select the group from the drop down of groups that you have set up. Select the stage from the stages that you set up, like I showed you a minute ago, and then it will show you what stage you selected here. You have question mark buttons that are talking to you and will open that help document about stages. And then of course you will select the cost type from cost types that you have set up. If this really was just all for labor, like if you were doing a framing labor cost code, you would probably select labor here. And then again, there's a question mark button that will take you to the help document about cost types. Then, for your builder's risk insurance or for your own information, you might want to know how much of your project costs are for direct hard costs or for indirect soft costs. So, CHS is asking, is this direct or indirect? So equate direct to being hard costs, like your materials, your framing, your stuff, the labor that goes into the house. And indirect costs might be, your financing expenses, sales commissions, some other types of things that you're putting that aren't part of the actual cost of the real building of the house. You can talk to your accountant about that, or to your builder's risk insurance person. Then you can print reports just for how much is for indirect and direct, and you can print budget reports that group in total by direct and indirect. The only way that we can know how much is direct or indirect is that it's attached to the cost code. Now I'd like you to remember that what we're working on here is your cost code's master setup. We are not working on a job budget right now. We are setting up things to use in your job budget. So right here we have something called default fields to use when setting up a new budget. Notice how this builder selected living square feet as the unit measure, and if you click this button, by the way, you can set up your own measure codes. It's quite simple, so I won't go into it too much. But if you put that this particular cost code should be based on living square feet, when you open to start a new budget, CHS will look out to the job to see if you've set up some specs or a spec for living square feet and given it a quantity for that job. And when the budget is opened, if this has something like living square feet, the quantity will already be there when you open the budget. So that's really handy to go ahead and mark what unit measures. If this happens to be something that will be an allowance, like maybe appliances, and you want to use CHS's ability to track allowances and allowance overages and do allowance agreements, you should mark this cost code with the allowance measure that will be in the drop down here. The quantity, when you're setting up a cost codes master, maybe you're setting up something like, I don't know, dumpsters. You might put a 5 in here, and then your unit measure is maybe months or something. And you might put a 5, so that will drop into a new budget. All of this is about what might drop into a new budget. Now this builder is splitting electrical between rough electrical and final electrical, and putting 60% to rough and putting 40%, if I drill down on it, to the final. And then putting a unit price in. What will happen on the budget when you open it, it will have the quantity, it will multiply that times 60% and times the unit price. Pay no attention to my prices, these are very old from when I started writing CHS, so they might be higher. You also can of course change any one of those on the budget line then after it drops in, including the unit price. And right there, when you're working on the budget, you can click to open this window actually again about the cost code and change the default unit price that drops in. The market percent is actually not very important here at all. It was put here just in case you just want everything to be marked up at a certain market percent all the time. But usually you're doing that on the budget worksheet. The tax buyer, if you say yes, this particular cost code should have sales tax on it, if you're in a state that requires sales tax, then you would select yes. You can read more about that in the help document. Now over here could be a really important window, because the bookkeeper entering bills or the person doing the job budget, like I said, can open and see some of this information, and they can see notes you might write to them right now about what this cost code is about, what it is, what it means. So somebody like me who doesn't understand exactly what the terms that you used are, and I'm a bookkeeper and I just for some reason want to look at what notes you wrote about it, so maybe I can figure out where a bill should be posted or something. It's a good idea if you would take the time to just write a little bit of notes here so that everybody could see what this is about, or that you're going to do 60% for this and 40% for that and why, or whatever it is you'd like to write. You only have to do that one time. You're just setting up the master to be the best that it can be, and you won't ever have to do it again. So that's how you set up a cost code. After you fill everything in, of course, you submit it. Also, like I said on this unit price, if you change it, you can click this button, because you can set up job budgets that you're going to use to copy for other budgets. So builders set up template jobs sometimes that they label as a what-if job, or if they're just trying to practice on something and they set unit prices on that inside the budget, not the master. You could update the unit price on all those template budgets if you like for this particular cost code. So let's close that. That's how I've messed with it, and so it says, do you want to save it or do you want to reset it or what? So it doesn't let me just accidentally close it without saving, but I'm just going to reset the form so that I can close it. Back on that, when you add a new cost code, like say you suddenly decide in that masonry materials, wherever that was, let me go to the M's. Maybe NHB had glass blocks, I saw. Maybe there's some reason that you do want glass blocks to be in here on its own cost code line, and so you set it up. If I look again at the NAHB ones, they had 4180 glass blocks / frame. So maybe you do set it up, and I'll do that real quickly and come right back. So now I have set up glass blocks frames as 4180. What I wanted to tell you is that if you decide, no, I don't want that detail here, I'd like it to be an item behind masonry materials, and you change your mind, if you click to edit this, there is a button over here. If needed, create item from this cost code and attach it to another cost code. And I'm going to attach it to 41 masonry materials 4110 and create a new item. And it tells me it's been created. The new item has been attached to that cost code. View the new item by clicking on the link for the items for 4110. If you plan to delete this cost code, you will probably first need to use a button to move all cost records for this cost code to another cost code. And that's this button right here. When you click it, it's going to go out and look out at your accounting database and everything else and change everything that was posted to 4180 to 4110. I'm not going to do that right now because I don't have any records posted. So I just wanted to point that out, that if you say, oh, you know, I should have made that an item, and you click here, which we did, and now we have glass block items. You can edit it, change it to be whatever assembly you want to call it. It will just supply this masonry materials for now, but you can edit those and take care of those items. This video is not going to be particularly about items. There will be another video about items used here, generic items used here, on budgets, etc. So I can say, let's get rid of the glass blocks. It will go check to see if it's been used anywhere. If it has, it will do another note saying it's been used. Maybe in your accounting records, do you want to see those? Or maybe on a budget, do you want to see those? Or maybe on a bid, etc. But it's found that it has not been used anywhere because I just set it up. And then there will be an audit record about the fact that I just did that. It says user confirmed deletion of cost code, and it shows me the cost code and who deleted it. So it is tracking who's doing what and who's messing with this stuff for you. So I have been talking about setting up cost codes, and I talked about how you are setting up some default costs to drop in when you open a new budget. So this isn't just about helping your bookkeeper, it's about helping whoever's doing the budget, which could very likely be you, the builder. I wanted to point out a couple of things. It says default measure through tax buyer are simply defaults. Again, this is not your budget. These are defaults to drop into a new budget. So from here to here are defaults that would drop into a new budget. So you may want to watch these things that you have set up to do some changing, to updating some pricing, etc. First, I'd like to mention that under items, it may not just be about materials like masonry materials or basement walls that I talked about. This builder has set up behind building permits some permits, etc., to remind himself about when he's doing a budget. So when you open a brand new jobs budget, this isn't looking to some spec. It's not dropping in any quantity when you start it, but you can say when you open a new budget, bring in the generic items that are behind the cost codes. And we refer to these items here that we set up on the master as, quote, generic items. Now when you're working on a budget or on purchase orders, etc., you can add some items there, and you can say, I want to add these to the generic master items when you're doing it. But I just wanted to point out that when a budget is open for this, you can tell it bring in all of these, and then you can open the items on the budget, check mark which ones you want, change some of the prices that dropped in for those items if you like at that time, and you can update the generic items to match those prices from there. Just wanted to point out another way that items are used. So in this case, the builder just put default quantity of one they want to drop in for now and didn't put any default unit price. The other thing I'd like to show you while you're figuring out prices is, let's go down here to, let me find the sanitary toilets. While you're working, either here or on the budget, you can actually look to see where a cost code has been used, and you can see your actual costs, where this cost code has been used with your actual job costs, because we are one big accounting program, and so CHS can gather that information for you about sanitary toilet. So if I look to see costs summed by job for sanitary toilet with average of fees, first of all, I want you to know that we are demo, we are not a builder, and you will probably have quite a few of these drop in for you when you open this. But you might drill down. This is a job that's more in progress. This is a job that's closed. You can see that. You could look at your closed ones and kind of eyeball what's going on here, and you can see this sort of from this Austin outhouse started being the same amount per month. You can say, well, that's a lot more than the 90 that I have per month in there. Or you can look and see what you've gotten so far on the one that's in progress, and it kind of looks like it's going to start being 125 per month. This was something that happened at the beginning. So you could decide that one's 125, the other one's 200. But maybe I need to at least up my unit price, and then you edit it and you say, let's just do 175 for whatever reason to get it higher. And then it's asking, like I mentioned a minute ago, you have these various what if jobs. Do you want to update the unit price on all of those also? What if jobs, like I said, are templates you set up to copy from. Instead of from the master, you're copying a similar type job or a template job to start your budget. So I could just start clicking the pencil button. It's already filled in things that I want to update it to, so I would just update it that quick. Whatever template jobs I have, say I want that unit price to be this. So I'll close that. The other thing, maybe you're not taking 5 months, but you're taking 6 months or 8 months or 7 months most of the time to build a custom home, who knows? So you could get that changed. But what I'd like to point out is right on the budget for the job, sanitary toilet. Now this is a fairly new job. We haven't filled in everything. We've done some stuff to it already. But if you were just starting to figure out what you wanted and you had that master default is right here, which you can change your master default right here because you realize that we need to have a higher amount in here. Maybe you know something. We've decided this home is going to take 12 months to build, so this has to do with this job, that kind of thing. But I wanted to show you that you can go ahead and see those master defaults right there and then update what if jobs while you're working on it. But the other important thing when you're working on the cost codes master is that some of these you might have a 1 in, you don't know, you're not putting in any default unit prices. And you might have a quantity of 1 just so it's there when you're working on a budget and you don't want to have to type 1 in and then put a price. So you want the 1 to drop in, but you're just going to wait and put in the price when you do budgets. In this case, like I said, if you have a default measure and when you open a new budget, if you set up a spec for slab square feet, the slab square feet will drop in as a quantity, so this default quantity on the master budget is just 0. And remember, this is you making it easier in your life for when you start a new budget, so you can do whatever you like. In this case, for now, if you start a new budget, 1 will drop in with a unit price of $2,500. What this move is, it's a question mark, and it says to move a cost code to a different group, you simply select the pencil edit icon and select a different group for that cost code. A couple of more defaults that I'd like to talk about. One is, let's go back to that building permits. There's some default notes that could drop in when you start a new budget, and let me click on that for budget. Notice that under rich text buyer notes, they have set up something that has this stuff listed so that if you're printing the budget as a proposal, this would be listed for the buyer notes for them to see. You can also print some budgets that show all the items that are selected for the budget behind it, but you might want this to drop in as some notes there so you don't have to type them again. Maybe there's some very common notes where you're explaining to the buyer what this particular cost code is for or something. So it's really handy to put some notes here that would drop into a brand new budget so you're not retyping notes to the buyer all the time that are the same for each different job that you're doing. Once it drops in over there on the budget, you'll have the box for the buyer notes. You can change this any way you like, the buyer notes. You can also set up some default internal notes about building permits that would drop in just to be talking to yourself or to whoever's doing the budget, some explanations, etc. that won't be buyer notes, that are just internal notes where you're communicating with each other. So that's a real handy default to go ahead and work on. And I still, again, think it should be the builder who is doing those defaults to make everything easier for your team or for yourself while you're working on a budget. I'm going to go down here to framing labor for a second. There's also some defaults you can set up for purchase orders. So let me click this one for framing labor. When you do purchase orders, you can type some notes that will print on the purchase order. So this is basically a scope of work that this builder put in here to drop in for framing labor purchase orders. So you could set up some here that would just keep dropping in when somebody opens a new purchase order that's explaining to the person doing the framing labor what they will be doing. But again, take your time, get this set up, because you're going to save so much time everywhere else because of these defaults. Now, we talked about everything being by stage and how to set up stages, and I'm not sure I was really clear about the direct and indirect, but let's show you what field search is. And you can search for various things. You can just decide you want to search for certain groups, or you want to just search for cost types, everything that's labor or turnkey. Maybe you decide you don't want so many turnkeys, so you just want to search for that. But let's just look for indirect. I already selected it, things that are marked with indirect, to give you an idea of what those soft costs might be. So if we go down here, start looking at various things, maybe you're calling the closing costs basically soft costs. They're not the cost of building up the home while you're doing it, or job costs that way. And way down here, builder's risk might be related to that, but it's indirect, that sort of thing. These kinds of things that are not your sticks and bricks or your labor that's going directly into the house. Hopefully that helps you just a little bit. And I will show all, which means I'm clearing that search out. Speaking of those stages, you can click this cost codes grouped by stages. When you load the NAHB cost codes, we don't have any stages attached there because you're going to set up your own stages how you like. So we don't want you to have to be changing them all, so there'll probably be a 0 stage in every single cost code when you load the NAHB ones. So if you want to more quickly not have to click the pencil edit icon, then change the stage, then submit it, you can open cost codes grouped by stage. And instead of being grouped by framing, plumbing, etc., this and that, these are now grouped by stage. So you can see all the cost codes that were put into the foundation stage by this builder. But these might all be 0 when you start, so what you can do is start just going through and dropping down and selecting or typing in which stage for all the cost codes to make it faster, so you don't have to edit each cost code. And then you can save all, or you can save it just because you changed one of them. You could save it here, but you would save all after you do the work. So back on the cost codes masters, you can do just a group heading list and send that to PDF or Excel if you like. Cost codes list by group, and it'll be formatted better if you send it to PDF. Cost codes list by stages, which is that one that we mentioned was on the other screen. The cost codes pricing and notes, so you can see what pricing you did if you want to print that out, send it to Excel for whatever reason, what defaults you attach to it. This one will give you cost codes, pricing, and items. So you'll see how you'll start seeing list of the generic items that you've attached to the cost code, which can be pretty handy to look at your generic items and what you've set up already. You can look at generic items only, and that's all you see, so that's pretty fast to just see all the items. And you can get group heading labels, and it tells you what kind of label you need to use for this, for just the groups, or labels for all the cost codes, etc. And you can print those if you put the Avery forms in, if you're for some reason wanting to set up file folders or something. One last thing I will mention is, do not set up a cost code, it says right here, for a builder fee, which is income to you and not a cost. And that may be a little different than when you set up your Excel spreadsheets to do your own thing because you're planning to hand those to the buyer, so you add a builder fee on it. I would like you to watch the video, and it will show you how CHS, when you print a budget report for a cost plus builder fee job, and it will ask you for what the builder fee is when you're setting the prices and stuff of the budget, and it will put the builder fee in for you. It will show that cost plus buyer, the total costs, and then drop down and put the builder fee right after that. If you set up it as a cost code, you start causing yourself sort of wanting to put things into that builder fee cost code, so you're sort of faking checks to yourself, trying to get it so it's there as an actual cost as they look at their actual costs. But there's draw request that is figuring out how much builder fee you've drawn, how much is going to be drawn on this certain draw request, and it's shown at the bottom and added to the cost that you're drawing. So please watch the video, and that will help you understand that a little bit better. So wouldn't you agree that this is not actually, even though this took quite a while to talk about it, it's not all that difficult at all for builders to do this work. In fact, I see them doing this work really fast because builders are the ones that totally get it and totally understand what the cost codes and all the default quantities and costs you might want to do, or verbiage that you might want to set up for default budget notes, etc., 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 and items behind it. That you as the builder can do this, and that it would be better if it's you that does it, and does it once you get it all set up like you like, you're not doing it a whole bunch more times, and it's feeding information for each cost code. And like I said, cost codes are the hub of a job costing program. They are used all over the place, so you want to make the job easier for everybody and yourself while you're doing the other work. So hopefully you agree that you'd be able to do this. It's not a big deal for a builder usually to do this. And thank you for watching, and please continue to the next seminar section, which will be about setting up jobs and some of those default specs, etc., that we were talking about that can be used when you open a new budget. Have a great day.